Yo, 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 visualize shark takes, hit the wave grinding. In the chat, gun shark odds make it rhyming. Sunday vibes, smooth bets, no confining. Hats engaged, can't stop us from shining. Bet on the spread, liking it, keep it tight. Push the odds further, jack on a hindsight. Odds fellows mind grasping the right sight. Hats, caps on heads, winners in plain sight. Hit the like, get in the chat, feel the flow, cash it, every dollar see the bankroll. Sunday grinding picks, now you gotta know. Extra points on the screen, sharp minds always glow. Big parlays, predictions we hold. Standing tall, betting knowledge all.
On a suddenly not so casual Sunday in December, it is NFL The Extra Points, the big show, week 17. The last Sunday in 2024, the Shark and the Odds Fellow right here live on Sharky 100 Nation, X, YouTube, and the Guns Picks channel. Pre-New Year's, a lot going on, a lot of backup quarterbacks. We got the Odds Fellow recording from a ski lodge, literally. Looks like he's at a lodge in the background. Guns Picks, what's
He's on the slopes. He's going to tear his shoulder up and get an ACL injury, but he is dedicated, and he's on the show here today, so I appreciate that. But, man, yeah, Sunday card, a little bit lackluster at best. We had most of I think, the best games on Christmas and Saturday, so we'll just have to deal with the games here, but, hell, they're games to be bet on here, and we're going to do our best to give you the best plays that pay the bills here. And Odds Fellow, what's going on, my man? How you doing on this beautiful Sunday morning? As he froze. All right, let's get into it. There he is.
Plenty of looks.
You there?
Still here. Plenty of looks. We're gonna keep it on mute. We got some good DJ music in the background, so if we need any hype music, we got that going too. So I'll use the mute button effectively throughout today's show.
not waiting around? And if we have any technical difficulties, we will just move on. Not waiting around. First game on the card. Gunn said lackluster. Certain games do matter. This is divisional football. 1 o'clock, Orchard Park, New York. Jets at Bills. I have a total. Second matchup of the year. A lot going on here. Gunn's looking at the Jets in the to open the broadcast. Plus 6.5 official.
Yeah, when we look at this game, two polar opposite of these two teams, right? You have a Jets team that has lost 5 out of the last 6, 4-11 with a minus 4-point differential. And then you have Buffalo coming off, a lackluster flat win versus New England. They're 12-3 on the year with a plus 9-point differential, and they're eyeing in on the playoffs here. Then, but you got to look at these teams as how they perform in splits. What I mean by that is first half versus second half. And if you look at the Jets, they've actually, even with their losses, they've competed in the first half of games after their bye week. I mean, we're talking about having the lead versus Seattle, down 2 points versus Miami. Then they led by 3 points at halftime versus the Rams. So they are able to compete in the first half, and I think this is the look that we're going to have to go with here. And on the Buffalo side, going through their statistics, they've really underperformed at home in the first half, and I'll tell you why. They trailed by 7 points versus New England last week. They only had a 2-point lead versus Kansas City at home. Then they trailed by 4 points versus Miami. Then they trailed by 3 points at halftime versus Tennessee. And then, of course, the first game of the season, they trailed by 7 points against Arizona. So the games that they did dominate in the first half at home this season was Jacksonville, which was a Monday Night Football game, and then they did it with San Francisco, which was a Sunday Night Football game. So, yes, in prime time, Buffalo does feel motivated to go show up in the first half. However, in these one-off, 1 o'clock type situational games, they have underperformed in the first half. I just think that this Jets team will compete versus Buffalo today. And you see the line here at -10. That is usually a dead line for Buffalo. They're 0-8 ATS as a favorite of 10 points or more in the last 8 games, and 2-5-1 ATS as a 10-plus favorite versus divisional opponents when Allen is the quarterback. I suspect an ugly game. I think Buffalo will get the win, but I think it will get ugly. In the first half, I think it's going to get even ugly. So let's go with the Jets here at plus 6.5. First half as the play.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't get too ugly, but I hope we get points, and I think we will. My first official in this game, taking the over at 46. Really nice buy low on the Buffalo side of this game. 5-2 versus the home over. Started 5-0. 0-2 last two. Both situational outliers. Went under by a hook against San Francisco in the snow because San Francisco couldn't score. And a game last week in the division against New England, we said this on the show. We thought Buffalo would play a poor football game coming off of scoring 90 points on the road prior, and they did. They came out flat. They didn't cover the spread. They only scored 24. They only scored 7 in the first half, but the game did have 703 total yards. Buffalo is 3-1 versus the home over this year on lines 45.5 through 46.5. Precisely this range, the only under last week against New England, as just discussed. And Buffalo is an absolute unit scoring the ball at home. 33 points per game. The Jets on the other side of this game exhibiting massive home versus road polarization in their totals. 3-4 versus the home over. 5-2 versus the road over. And you saw it last week. Precisely that. 9 points against the Rams. A couple turnovers. A special teams mistake late. 321 yards, only 9 points by low. The Jets defense, as we've discussed week after week, this is not Robert Saleh. This is really an interim coach coaching his second to last game. He will not be with this franchise next year. And this is a unit that was supposed to be good. They're a complete sieve on the road, giving up 28 points per game this year across 7 matchups. And this is data abundant, targeting late season divisional football. These teams did play Monday Night Football Week 6 in East Rutherford on October 14th. Buffalo 23, New York Jets 20 over 42. That game went over, but it was actually a huge outlier. The game was 3-3 in the second half after a massive explosion in the 44 first downs in that game. And now Book's moving the line up to 47 at open, confirming what you saw in terms of game flow at MetLife will continue this afternoon in a cold Orchard Park, New York. 2 officials in this one, the gun on the first half, plus 6.5, and myself over 6. I think we're having issues with Anthony here in terms of his recording. So we're just going to keep it moving. Going back to the gun here, 1 o'clock in MetLife Stadium. Very interesting game here. Colts, Giants. One of the narratives this week truly is what teams care, which teams don't. And this is really one of the best examples of it. The Colts need to win to stay alive in the AFC wildcard race. The Giants, frankly, do not need to win at all as they're trying to crater for the number 1 overall pick. Heavy line Colts. The gun is looking at the total, and I will jump off it. Gun's under 40.5.
I think this is going to be a low-scoring game here at MetLife on East Rutherford, New Jersey. And yeah, you have Indy still playoff hopes alive. They're 7-8 on the year, and they're going against a Giants team that have lost 10 in a row. They're 2-13 on the year with a minus 10-point differential. Now, when we look at Indianapolis, they want to run the ball. They're 6th in rush play percentage, 7th in rushing yards per carry, and they're 8th in rush yards per game. And then what do you got with this Giants team? They can't stop the run. A lot of teams try to run on them. They're 28th in opposing rush yards per play, and they're 31st in opposing rush yards per game. And no Anthony Richardson here for the Indianapolis Colts. Are going to go with Joey Flacco, maybe a little bit more balanced here with the passing game. But if you actually look at Joey Flacco in his last 3 starts, Indianapolis really hasn't put up the points. They've averaged 17.6 points per game in these last 3 starts. And, of course, Drew Lock is going to be starting here for the Giants today. And this season, when he's the starter, the Giants have put up 20, 11, and 7 points. That's 12.6 points per game. So on both sides for both quarterbacks, not a lot of production there from the offensive side of the ball. And you're seeing the total here sit at like 40 and a half on some of the books. And this is the lowest total that Indianapolis has seen all year. So this is giving you a high indicator. You're probably looking at a low total here. And of course, the Giants 6-2 to the under at home this season. And when Indianapolis plays non-conference opponents, 4-0 to the under this year. Granted, those are all teams in the NFC North. But I think in this situation, when you're dealing with two backup quarterbacks going up against each other, I don't think it's going to be a high scoring affair here in MetLife. And if there's going to be scoring, it's going to be on the Indianapolis side, because I don't think the Giants are even willing to put up points at this situation. So give me the under here, 40.5 as the play.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And looking at the side officially here, I'm at -7. That is -133. Bought a little bit of juice. It's late season. I just want to get the right numbers. I'm not worried about 0.2 units here. And something Guns and I talked about early season, it's outside of the context of pro football, but when you're betting baseball, you don't think twice about laying -130. It's very standard stuff. And gambling Twitter, gambling X, YouTube, Instagram, all these apps, people seem to harp on this like you're criminally incorrect for buying a quarter unit worth of juice. You got to get the right number in these spots. You saw it on Thursday Night Football. If you got the right line, you covered with the Seahawks. The late line did not cover at 3.5. So you want to get the right side of this number. I'm on -7 officially. And when you really look at this, this is just your classic one. The other does not at all. And truthfully, I think the psychology with the Giants right now is just a complete funeral. I think this is Brian Daboll's last game as head coach at MetLife. And this is not where the team is rallying around their coach. This guy's out the door, really noted over the last few years as kind of ostracizing his players. I said this in week 1 because he had actually lost weight in the offseason. And I thought a healthier version of this guy would actually manage the players better, because last year he was just noticeably toxic with his players on the sideline. It hasn't changed. This team has been a disaster at MetLife, 0-8 straight up, 1-7 ATS. And we talked about this going back a couple weeks ago when they covered against New Orleans. It's incredibly hard to get clean swept ATS in your home stadium, but they got their cover. And I don't think that means there's upward momentum coming. I think that was their one-off spot, and the Crater Zone is fully engaged. And if you actually look at that cover against New Orleans, 14-11 on a +5.5, they were down 14-3 early fourth quarter before Derek Carr broke his hand on a rollout, undesigned run play, landing on his wrist. And the Giants did proceed to backdoor it with a touchdown +2 in the fourth quarter. New Orleans had missed 2 field goals in the beginning of that game. New Orleans should have been up more. And ultimately, without Derek Carr, they gave it away. And if you look at what the Giants are doing here since switching off of Daniel Jones, they're 0-5 straight up. They're 1-4 ATS. They're 1-2 ATS at home. And as I mentioned, that cover was really a luck box cover. The other 2 games, blown out against Baltimore on a 16.5, 35-14. And I think most notably, played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 12. Bucks laid basically the same line, -6, -7, 30-7 Bucks. In my opinion, the Bucks and Indianapolis are incredibly similar in their talent, their weighting, and their motivation, both scrapping at the back end of playoff races. Books like Indy, just like they like the Bucks. And final point on this is a blowout line. We've been saying this all year with teams like Denver, the Chargers, basically teams that the public doesn't perceive to be heavy in strength, laying huge numbers like this. They cover at astounding efficiency points. Flacco is starting today. That's not a problem. His only 2 non-covers this year at Minnesota and versus Buffalo. Friendly reminder, Minnesota is right at the top of the NFC. Buffalo might go to the Super Bowl. The Giants are the polar, utter opposite to those non-covers. And final point here. These teams did actually play at MetLife in week 17 2 years ago, New Year's Day 2023. It was Nick Foles for the Colts versus Daniel Jones. The Giants were a home favorite that day, -5.5, and hammered the Colts 38-10. A year and a half later, things have changed drastically. Same stadium. The line moves across 13 points to Indianapolis. I have Indianapolis to win this game by 21 points. I think you're going to see a very similar game to the Tampa Bay game, which I mentioned was 30-7, and that would correlate to Guns' under. Take Indianapolis here. It's a blowout line. It's not a value on the dog line. Guns, any comments on that?
No, I was going to go. Actually, when I initially started the cap, I was looking for a direction to get to the Colts. I mean, that was kind of where I wanted to go. And then I just kind of looked at everything and I was like, well, I kind of like the total a little bit more on this one. But yeah, I agree with you 100% on this one. It's going to be one-sided in this game. I just think it's going to be all Colts. And if the points are going to be coming, it's going to come from them. The way I capped this, I said it was going to be anywhere between 21 to 24 to 7 or something like that. That's kind of what I was thinking with that one. And that would get us both there. On paper. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to be taking a side on this one, the only side to be taken is the Colts. They're the one that's motivated. They're the one that's in the, has the playoffs on the line. And you've just seen the Giants of how they underperformed at home in MetLife in front of their own fans. They're sick. They're wearing the bags on their head, a la the 80, the old days of the Lions. This is an embarrassing team. And yeah, you may be seeing the last of Daboll here today in MetLife.
Yeah, without question. And just final point on that, in terms of the fans, I'm from New York. I know New York people. They're passionate. If they're down on a team, they will let you know. And we've seen this with other teams in other sports, the Mets, the Yankees, the Knicks. This current generation of players does not function very well when fans are booing and showing them bad energy. They feed off the energy of the crowd. This is a funeral game today. It's nothing to do with a buy low on the Giants. Buy the Colts and let's dominate. Staying within this division, a divisional game in Philadelphia this afternoon. Cowboys at Eagles. Go back to August. We thought, wow, after Christmas, Dak versus Jalen Hurts, rivalry game. No, sir. Cooper Rush at Kenny Pickett. A showcase to week 17. There's 18 teams playing today, 11 backup quarterbacks. Historical stuff. I was joking with the gun before the show. This reminded me of midsummer trying to cap college football, trying to figure out the transfer portal and the new quarterbacks on teams. You never see this in pro football at this rate, but the gun seems to have figured it out, taking Dallas on the road at plus 7.5.
Yeah, I was capping this like I would cap bowl games. I need to see who the opt-outs are before the game. And you wouldn't think that you need that in the NFL, but now you do, especially with the quarterback situation going on with both teams here. Lincoln Financial will be, I don't even think it's going to be thumping today. I mean, we got backup quarterbacks here. Philly, awful loss, 12-3, losing to Washington. I mean, having the lead and then just full control of the game and then just losing that one. +3 turnover ratio in that game. It was absolutely abysmal spot there. And I regret taking Philly. But you got a Dallas team that is actually playing good football right now, and I think it's going to result in McCarthy having his job next year. 4 out of the 5 games they've won. They're 7-8 on the year, but they have a -5 point differential. Now, there's an offensive spark that has happened with this Dallas Cowboy team. They average 26 points per game in their last 4, 342 yards of total offense on average in that span. No Jalen Hurts in this game. Big issues, could cause some big issues, especially with Kenny Pickett under center. When he was the quarterback last week versus Washington, a Washington team that, quite frankly, doesn't have the best defense in the world, they only scored 6 points. And I'm not counting that run that Saquon Barkley had for 68 yards. That was a touchdown that all Kenny Pickett did was have to hand the ball off. This was a second half effort there from Kenny Pickett. 6 points against Washington. So I don't expect a lot here from him today. You have the revenge angle. If you need revenge angles on this one, Dallas did lose 34-6 in the previous matchup. They were 7.5 point home dogs, and now the line is virtually identical. But you have Dallas here as the road team. And then when Philly has performed in Lincoln Financial this year as a favorite, hasn't been good for them. They're 1-3 as a favorite of 7 points or more, and they're 0-3 ATS as a 7+ favorite at home. So what you're seeing here is you got a team that just underperforms in these situations, especially as big favorites. And you have Dallas as 4-1 ATS in the last 5 games and just should be super motivated to go play a Philly team in their division and absolutely come in here and try to get a win. And I got 7.5 last night. And it's dropped to 7 in a lot of books. It's still a good line. Anything 7 and above, that's the way you want to go with this one. So, yeah, I like Dallas here. Give me Dallas here, plus 7.5 as the play.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly agree. I mean, I think if you look at Cooper Rush, we talked about this 2 years ago when he was the backup. This guy is a cover machine. I mean, I remember when Teddy Bridgewater was the cover machine as a backup. I mean, you got to replace Teddy Bridgewater with Cooper Rush. He's basically the auto cover backup. And you look at this season, since he became the quarterback, he's 4-1 straight up last 5. Forget even the spread. 4-1 straight up, 1-0 road in the division, outright win at plus 10.5 at Washington in week 12, 2-0 in the division overall, a cover at home against the Giants. Only non-cover in recent history was that funky non-cover Monday Night Football against the Bengals, where they fumbled or blocked a kick and then touched it. So the Bengals regained possession to score a touchdown. This is absolutely all over Dallas here. Our guy Peter says he loves it. I haven't gotten there officially. The gun making fantastic points. Take Dallas at plus 7.5. Great look. Continuing this conversation, we're going 1 o'clock in New Orleans. Raiders at Saints. I haven't dropped this official yet. I will now. Taking the over at 37.5. This is a really elite spot to take the over. When you see this game, 3-12 versus 5-10, it really just is your late season game that is completely meaningless to the public, the fans, the playoff race. But I'll tell you one thing. This means a lot to Aiden O'Connell and Spencer Rattler. This is going to be a game where these guys want to put good game film on record for their future careers. And if you really zoom in further to this matchup, you're getting a fantastic buy low on New Orleans. The last time the Saints played a football game, they got shut out in Lambeau Field primetime last week. 0 points last week. Now they're back at home inside the dome. And Rattler in limited duty this year has been completely polarized, road versus home. Only other road game at the Chargers, 8 points. So 8 total road points. But if you go to the home games, week 6 versus Tampa Bay, 51-27. A massive over. 27-24 in the first half alone. Total gunslinger stuff. And week 7 Thursday Night Football on this precise line outside of the division versus an AFC West opponent. Denver traveled to New Orleans. The line was precisely 37.5. Denver 33-10 over. And the final result on this, Jake Hayner started a game against Washington 2 weeks ago. He got pulled at the half. Rattler comes in and scores 19 points in the second half against Washington to almost win the game outright. Raiders didn't score the ball last week against Jacksonville. O'Connell's going to sling it. Rattler's going to sling it. This is a great over at 1 o'clock in New Orleans. I believe that is 12 noon local. Turn them up, boys. Let's get to 50 in this one. Guns, picks, talk to me.
Yeah, this one's just a tough game to cap for me. I kind of stayed away from these two bad teams on this one, so this was just something that was just not on my radar. I kind of looked at it a little bit, just trying to figure out if there was a pattern there, and it just nothing really stuck out to me on this one. It was just a complete pass for me, but I'm not going to talk you off your angle on this one. Yeah, without question. And I was looking at it this morning. I really do like this over. I think this is just your classic late season game that means nothing, but there's going to be a lot of points. By 37.5 over, and let's cash. My next play, 1 o'clock divisional football. Panthers at Bucks. Interesting game here. Obviously, the Panthers have caught momentum midseason. They're a covering machine. We think the spread might be very tight at 8, 9, or 10, and some funky steam coming in late here, now at plus 10. Not entirely sure what's going on there to instigate that action, but the total hasn't moved. And we love the total over at 47.5. This is a very, very similar spot to the Bills home over. I told you guys the Bills started 5-0 versus the over at home and were 0-2 last 2. Very similar situation with Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay started 4-1 versus the home over, 0-2 last 2 as well. Both situational outliers.
Week 10 versus San Francisco went under 48.5, 23-20. Just to refresh your guys' memory on that game, Jake Moody missed 3 field goals for San Francisco. Deebo Samuel shoved him on the sideline. If he's making those kicks, San Francisco scores over 30 points. It goes over, and Tampa Bay has more urgency to push back with points themselves. Jake Moody single-handedly pulled that game under. And more recently in Week 14 against Vegas, 28-13, under 47. Game had 706 total yards. Baker threw a red zone pick in the first half, and O'Connell threw a red zone pick in the second half. That also could have gone over. And Carolina has been an absolute sieve on the road this year defensively, giving up 32.5 points per game. This is Dave Canales at the end of his first year with Bryce Young. They're slinging the rock. They're not holding back. They're trying to get this kid in flow, and it's very aggressive schematically. Carolina is 11-4 versus the over, 1-0 versus the road over in the division. And this is the second matchup of the year in the division, so we do have data abundance. These teams did go over in Carolina week 13 in overtime, 26-23, over 43. That game shouldn't have even been close to 43 points. 46 first downs in that game, 812 total yards, 3 missed field goals. Baker, yet another plus territory interception. And now the books saw that. They saw all those yards, all those first downs, and told us with this line, it's going to repeat and it's going to be higher. 43 moved up to 49 open, indicating 55 points. This is how Tampa wants to play, wide open and fast. Carolina will mirror and push back. This projects to be a game right around a touchdown and very high scoring. Guns, any thoughts on this game?
It's the over. That's all. That's the only way you play this. I actually played it earlier in the week at 48. Thought I'd get a good number on that one because I thought it'd get steamed up to maybe 50. It did not. Still 47.5. I still think there's validity to it. I mean, like you said, the total was like 43 last time, and now you're seeing it shoot up to 48. It's like it's the books giving you recognition that, like, yeah, this is 2 high scoring teams, and the momentum of both of these offenses is to score points and maybe bend not break a little bit on the defensive side, but that's not what has happened, especially with Carolina. Carolina having one of the worst opposing scoring defenses in the league. So I think there's going to be a lot of scoring in this one. I think it's going to go well over the total here. Not going to be an overtime over, for that matter, like it was last time. I think this is going to be over somewhere in the third or the fourth quarter, where these guys are just going to go back and forth and see 2 quarterbacks just slinging it like dogs they are here in a divisional matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Take the over. Let's dominate. Staying at 1 o'clock, a couple more games. 4 more backup quarterbacks. Titans with Mason Rudolph. Jags, Mac Jones. Tua's out as well. We're getting Tyler Huntley this afternoon in Cleveland. And, of course, Cleveland playing the notorious DTR. Guns, there's a lot of weather in Cleveland this afternoon. I know our guy James is out there probably drinking vodka right now, going to the stadium. I can't lie. I would love to go to a late season game in Cleveland. I'm sure the atmosphere is electric. I think the under in this game speaks volumes. Weather, backups, Guns, any thoughts on this one?
I mean, yeah, it's Miami when they go into cold weather. You can look at that situation if you want and lean towards the Cleveland side. But, I mean, Miami still has something to play for, right? They're still in playoff contention, whether you like it or not. It just feels like to me that they've already tried to give up hope here, putting in Tyler Huntley instead of putting in Tua. I don't know what's going on with the Tua situation. I don't know what the injuries are with him, if they just want to keep him safe or for whatever reason. But I just think that with how good Miami has been playing consistently, other than the Houston and the Green Bay game, they've really just showed up. But like I said, at home, they've showed up. On the road, they have not. So, and then you just have slews of injuries all across the board, including the wide receiver corps. No one's talking about Tyreek Hill. No one's talking about Jalen Waddle. No one's talking about a lot of the injuries there, where these guys are just walking into this game banged up to a degree. But do you trust DTR to get you a cover? No. I don't trust anybody on the Cleveland side. I don't trust anybody on the Miami side. But if there is probably a direction to take with this one, lean towards the under. I know the under is probably like what, 20, 33. I think it was like 33. I'm being a little bit overinflated with that line, but I'm just saying that this is a game I don't want to even touch. It's like a preseason game. I don't want to bet on preseason.
Yeah, this is a really tough game. Our guy says, Mike Lee says, I like Cleveland plus the points. Honestly, this is a really tough game. Miami has motivation, but I got to say, I think some of these teams, particularly Miami, they're kind of checked out.
Yeah.
It's hard all these teams actually need Denver to lose at Kansas City next week. Kansas City's throwing Carson Wentz, and you're going to see Denver favored on the road in Kansas City. I know we'll be on Denver next week to win in Kansas City. I love that spot. So I think Mike McDonald and these guys kind of know that what's going on. So it's one of those where, if they win, they have a chance, but it's probably very low probability. In terms of the actual game, it's really hard to project what Tyler Huntley is going to do in this environment. Of course, Miami has been really bad on the road in the cold with Tua, but Tyler Huntley is a different guy. He played, college football at Utah. Friendly reminder, that's cold weather up there. So this is not Tua coming from all warm weather environments in his life, having basically no ability to function in the cold. Huntley's a different type of guy. You saw him compete reasonably well on the road when he played for the Ravens 2 seasons in a row, late season when Lamar Jackson got hurt. And you did see him cover a game at New England early season on the road in week 5, an outright win 15-10, which Miami did actually dominate considerably in terms of the yardage and game dispersion. And that was versus Jacoby Brissett, who honestly kind of has the same expected quotient as DTR, just a backup that can't really move the ball. I think this game is graded very similarly. I see a very similar game to the week 5 game at New England, somewhere along the lines of 15-10 Miami. I do disagree. I don't think Cleveland's a scrappy dog here. I think Tyler Huntley might be a nice uptick in terms of the weather for the Dolphins here. And I think he will compete reasonably well on the road versus DTR, who, in my opinion, if there was still arena football, he would be going to the Arena League after this year. This kid is not a professional quarterback. He's incredibly athletic. I would say this. I think a position change could be great for DTR. He kind of reminds me of Antoine Randall L. a little bit. If you guys remember, kid coming out of Indiana as a quarterback, went to the Steelers. I believe a coach on the Lions right now. But Randall L. and DTR actually move very similarly in open field. Randall L. was a great kick returner. If you guys watch DTR run outside of the pocket, he really reminds me of a kick returner, like a punt returner. I think a position change would be great for this guy. We don't love him as a quarterback. I would lean towards Miami in this game. And as Gunn said, the under. Guns, any further comments?
Nah, let's move on.
Yeah, last game at 1 o'clock here. Another one that's very uninspiring. 3-12 Titans, 3-12 Jags. Both teams far below expectations. I think it really incredibly surprising stuff here. The Titans came into this season with really high expectations. I believe in the futures market, they were graded somewhere around 7 wins. Not even close to that. Really disastrous. And I think this is going to come down to the ownership group, whether or not they bring this coach back, because this has been a disaster since really week 1 when Levis gave away the game in Chicago to not cover 24-17 against first start Caleb Williams. Jaguars, same conversation. 3-12. Jags, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I will say that. What are you guys doing? Playoffs 2 years ago, Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick, largely touted as a unicorn quarterback coming out of Clemson. Doug Peterson, ex-Super Bowl winning coach. You guys are 3-12. What are you guys doing? Guns, I mean, they have to be the biggest disaster in the whole season, right?
Yeah, complete crash and burn. I thought this was a Jags team was a playoff team. I thought Tennessee, I was kind of not really on the high end of them at all. But when we look at these two teams, you look at how the Tennessee Titans have performed on the road, a lot of points. Every time there's a lot of points. I think the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, last 7 have gone over the total, and doesn't matter where you set the line on this one. I know both played like a really flat spot last time. It was 10-6 in that spot, and that was a 40.5 total line. I think the spread is accurate as far as the line functionality because it was like -3, and now you're seeing it here right around 1 and a pick 'em. But I kind of lean towards the over on the sheer fact that like there's got to be some sort of life between these two teams and they can actually score some points. And I know the Jags have really, at least found a little bit of offense even with Mac Jones in the lineup there. So maybe looking towards an over on this one as a small lean, but another lackluster game that I didn't want to touch, similar to Miami. And similar to Cleveland, it was just not a non-playable game for me with two bad teams. Who knows what their mentality is going to this one? Are they playing for a draft pick spot, or are they actually going to play out the season and really put in an effort to get a W?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's something to be said about that game that was played a few weeks ago. Jags at Titans 10-6. It was just a turnover battle. A couple interceptions in the first half by the Jags. Late drive by Tennessee, downs, soaked up over basically 6 minutes of clock. You're going to see more points. I don't really love the line, though. I think what books are telling you here is it's going to come significantly north off of 10-6, but I think they're telling you it's going to land right around 38 or 39. Like sometimes with line functionality, they're acknowledging the outlier, but they're telling you we're just resetting the line with precision, not to go over, just to get back to the average. And I think that's what you're going to see here. That game had like roughly 600 yards. It was very much on the mean to a 37-40 total. I think you're going to see a really tight one. As you said, in terms of the actual game line, also very tight. I think this is going to be pretty much like a 1-point game, field goal game, right around 38 points. Mac Jones has played much better ball as a home quarterback with the Jags. And as you mentioned, Mason Rudolph, gunslinger on the road. But it's divisional football. It's scrappy. I think this game is really difficult. I think it's incredibly, incredibly sharp stuff. Our advice on this one, if you want to watch this game, get a 12-pack 100%. This is a disaster. And if you want to bet this game, get a 24-pack and reconsider your life.
You might need some ayahuasca or some morphine to watch this one too. You gotta alter your mindset to go watch that game. Hey, you know what? It'd be a great color game. So yeah, maybe take a little acid or some mushrooms and you'd be all right there watching this game. But yeah, it's talk about non-exciting football. It's this game right here.
Segueing to 4 o'clock. I actually just realized the Dolphins-Browns game is at 4:05. What a bizarre kick time that is. I missed that. Apologies, guys. I thought it was at 1 o'clock. It's not. It's 4:05. Already discussed. But 4:25 Fox Sports, Packers-Vikings, game of the day without question. 11-4 Packers, 13-2 Vikings. Played a tight one in Lambeau going back early season. It wasn't that tight. Vikings were up significantly early. I believe 3 early touchdowns. Packers made a late rush to get it to a 2-point final, 31-29. This should be a tight game throughout, I think. Not so much a blowout one way and then a comeback. I see this possession for possession. It looks like a total that's going up. Guns loves the total over officially at 48.5.
Yeah, I love this total. It's probably my favorite total that I love this week. And you have two teams that are actually playing for something, right? You have an 11-4 Green Bay team going against a 13-2 Minnesota team. Minnesota sitting in the driver's seat right now in the NFC North. But right now, you have two top 10 offenses going up against each other. You have Green Bay that's ranked 7th in an offensive scoring versus a Minnesota team that's ranked 9th in offensive scoring. And when you look at Green Bay, they tend to give up the points on the road. They only give up 16 points per game to their opponents at home, 23 points per game given up on the road. And Green Bay has given up points to divisional opponents this year on average, 27 points per game versus divisional opponents. They gave up 19, 34, 24 and 31 in that sample size. And then you got to look at Minnesota, right? They've averaged 31 points per game in the last 4 games and have given up 20 points or more in 4 out of the last 5 games. So this is another team that is on the overside of things with the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota has given up 25 points per game to divisional opponents this year as well. They're 3-1 to the over in those spots. So that is another reason why I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair here. And also look at the total. This is the second highest total Minnesota has had versus the divisional opponent all year, with the highest being against the Detroit Lions, which was set at the virtually the exact same line, 49 and a half, and that hit 60 points. So I think we're going to see a similar situation here with two teams going back and forth, scoring points left and right. Offensive specialty here at 425, which is the game of the week, which is perfect for the NFL viewer. Give me the over here, 48.5. Green Bay, Minnesota as the play.
Yeah, I would agree. This is definitely an over number. And if you look at how Minnesota has functioned at home in the division, they've scored the ball incredibly well. 31-29 versus Detroit, put 30 on Chicago. And I mean, these offenses are just flat out clicking. This definitely really speaks to it. I haven't gotten there yet, but I think Gun's speaking some deep truth on the over here. 425 Fox. I believe that's the A team with Fox. It's really the only relevant game in that window. Of course, this week, Christmas Day and Thursday, and then +3 yesterday, as Gunn said. Not a lot of games this week on Sunday, but it is NFL The Extra Points. We're bringing you all the top looks and the conversation. 8 o'clock, disagreement between myself and the Gun. Rare disagreement here. I'm interested to have this conversation. Falcons 8-7, need to win. Commanders at home 10-5. Prime time in Landover, Maryland. Guns taking Atlanta at +3.5. I will make further comments.
Yeah, I think once in a while we have a disagreement. I think we have one here, and you have Atlanta that's 8-7. Still have their life on the line here in the playoffs. They're going against a 10-5 Washington team that has a +5 point differential, and to me, really unimpressive as of late. And I'll get to that in a second. But Atlanta, they're 2-4 straight up in their last 6 games. So yeah, this is a team that on paper is declining a bit, but they've outgained their opponents 5 out of the last 6 games. But the biggest issue was the turnovers. And what did they do to fix the turnovers? They got rid of Kirk Cousins and put in Michael Penix. Now you got to look at Washington. 3 straight games, including the one against Philly last week. But when we break down these games, who have they played really? Tennessee. Tennessee is one of the worst teams in the NFL. We've talked about them exhaustingly this year, how bad they are. And then versus New Orleans. New Orleans was playing with Spencer Rattler, backup quarterback, and they nearly came back in that game, but a missed 2-point conversion to get the W was the difference in that one. That's why Washington escaped with a win. And then versus Philly. And yes, Philly had full control of that game when Jalen Hurts was in the lineup. When he got taken out of the lineup and they put Kenny Pickett in, the scoring stopped. This was a Philly team that had a +3 turnover ratio in that game, and they lost. So that gives you everything you need to know that Washington just got lucky to squeak out the win in that game versus a backup quarterback for an entire half. And then Atlanta, like I said, going with Michael Penix this week. He didn't do too bad. They in the game versus the Giants, 34-7 was the outcome in that one, but a lot of that was aided by 2 pick sixes given up by Drew Lock. And then Atlanta has just performed well versus the NFC East this year. If you go back and look, they're 3-0 straight up in ATS versus the NFC East this year with a +11.3 point differential. And then just Washington has underperformed versus the NFC South, going 1-2 ATS in those positions. I just think that Atlanta has the ability to keep it close here versus a Washington team that I think is just kind of squeaking away with a lot of wins. They also have a divisional sandwich here, having to play Philly, coming off the highs of that big win versus Philly to keep themselves in contention to win the division. And then they got Dallas coming up next week. 2 important games in a sandwich, and then you have this one-off with Atlanta that I don't think is going to mean a lot to Washington here. So yeah, it means more to Atlanta than it does Washington. Give me Atlanta here, +3.5 as the play.
Yeah, I mean, great points. As we said, disagreement here. And I want to really elaborate on some of those things because I think that there's maybe a little detail here which needs to be discussed. I have Washington at -3. Very similar conversation to the Indianapolis side. I bought a little juice. It's -131. Again, don't worry about buying 1/5 unit worth of juice late season football. -3 is a great number. And I think when you really look at Washington here, Washington can clinch a wild card berth tonight. I think that's very important. They're 1 game ahead of Seattle. If they win tonight, they lock it up. And I think they will be really focused for that. And I think Guns mentioned they had cleaned up bad teams. I think Atlanta is a bad team. And if you look at what they've done at home, 5-1 ATS at home versus non-playoff teams, 4-0 ATS at home versus out of division non-playoff teams. And those games Guns mentioned, I went through it last night to see if there was fraud. I don't sense fraud here. They played Cleveland in week 5 on this number precisely, -3.5, and won the game 34-13 with emphasis. Key point, they dominated the yards, 434 to 212. Slightly later on, Carolina at home, -9.5. dominated again, 421 to only 180 yards for Carolina. The Chicago game is very interesting in terms of the supposed fraudulence of this, because people want to say they won with a Hail Mary, therefore they got lucky. Washington actually dominated that game. Chicago was the one that backdoored it. And then Washington, of course, walked it off. Washington in that game had 481 yards. Chicago only had 307. So the point is, who really got lucky? I think Chicago, throughout the duration of that game, to be even close at that final point. And slightly later on, week 13 against Tennessee, again, a very similar number, -5.5, 42-19 W. Yet again, domination. 463 yards, only 245. So when I see them 4-0 in this environment against non-playoff teams outside of the division at home as a favorite, I went through it and I said, okay, were those just bullshit covers? No, they actually like obliterated every one of these teams. And if you look at Atlanta's 2-0 last two. They beat Vegas and the Giants, who have a combined record of 5-25. And I think when you talk about Atlanta on the road here with Michael Penix, this is not where I want to buy this kid on the road. This is his first career road start. It's prime time, out of division, against a team that can clinch the playoffs in the freezing cold, where he played his first start in a dome with a home crowd against the worst team in the league as a favorite. And I think this is where it flips. Jaden Daniels is going to want to show out here against a fellow top 10 pick. It's crazy to say because it's still season one, but Jaden Daniels has significantly more experience than Penix. Buying a rookie quarterback on the road in his first start is incredibly difficult. And final point on this, Atlanta's last two games as a road underdog outside of the division, absolutely obliterated twice. 38-6 at Denver loss, 42-21 at Minnesota loss. Very similar line there, +4.5. I think this is really all over Washington. Love Washington tonight. Guns likes Atlanta. We will see what happens. Conversation wins. Want to talk Monday Night Football? Of course, we're only 47 minutes in here. Last game of the slate. Big time football. We thought it'd be bigger. We thought it would be a huge late season post-Christmas rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. It is not that. The Niners are out of the playoffs to the surprise of many, including myself. I could have never seen the Niners 6-9 at this point in the season, but the Niners have absolutely nothing to play for. They're injured. They're looking forward to next year. The Lions have revenge. The Lions love numbers like this on the road. Guns, I'm looking at Detroit. Any thoughts?
Yeah, if you watch my NFL preview shows that I did, I said the 49ers aren't going to make the playoffs. So I was definitely right about that one. Pat on the back to me. Got that one right, but I had a lot of help along the way with a lot of the injuries, but I'm leaning towards the Detroit side on this one and the points. You got to understand there is a mentality and there is a motivation here on Dan Campbell's side and the Detroit Lions. This is the NFC championship matchup from last year. If you remember how that game turned out, you had Detroit going out early with a big lead, and then San Francisco came back in that game, ended up winning the game outright. So I think there is a little bit of a motivational factor here with Detroit. And then you just got to look at how the San Francisco 49ers have performed as a dog this year. This is going to be their third time as a dog. They played Buffalo. They lost by 25. They played the Green Bay Packers. They lost by 28. So they've absolutely laid an egg in the dog role. And I just think you have a Detroit team that is just going to want to put the foot on the gas pedal through the rest of the season. I don't care about the injuries that have happened with this team. I think this team is going to be well fit. It's sitting here at -4 that I'm seeing on the board here. The only direction I would take in this one, and I might get there on paper at the end of the day, is taking Detroit here in the points on the road versus a San Francisco team that's got no life left and is probably going to get stomped here by the Detroit Lions on Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't gone official with it myself in my my personal life here, but I want to look at this line and see where we're at, because I think we can drop this probably right now. We're at 3.5. I don't know if it's going to budge off that, but as you said, this is just a terrible spot to buy the Niners as a dog. Environmentally, we said the Giants are a funeral. You're never going to say the Niners are a funeral, but based on their expectations, this really has funeral aspect to it. And I think just in terms of Detroit on the road as a favorite against the NFC outside of the division, there's 2 games where they laid this number at Arizona within this division, week 3, cover 20-13 -3, and at Dallas, week 6. I think even more importantly, that was a revenge game against Dallas. They came out and blew out Dallas 47-9. Same line there, -3. It's the exact same grading. Books love them. They were a significant dog in the playoffs last year. The line has shifted significantly. And this is Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, and these guys. This is not the type of team that just takes games off because they've had a good season. They're out for blood every game. They want to kick your ass and tell you about it. This is a revenge game of the highest order. This really takes on massive energy here on Monday Night Football. I'm going to wait on it. We're looking to see if we can get a 3 if it moves the other direction. I don't mind 4, but absolutely love Detroit. And that will be a collaboration, I'm sure, with the Gun tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wrap for this one, guys. A little bit of a shorter show this week. Obviously, only 9 games on Sunday, plus Monday Night Football. A lot of official plays. I'm on the Buffalo New York Jets over 46. Indianapolis -7 at -133. Carolina Tampa Bay over 47.5. Las Vegas New Orleans over 37.5. Late night Washington -3, -131. The odds fellow had issues with his recording. He's actually on a ski trip. Sending him all the best vibes. Having a hell of a day there. Get on the slopes. Hang the hell out. 1 p.m. Dallas Philly under 38.5. Carolina Tampa Bay over 47.5 alignment, and Carolina +10. And the Gun 5 plays as well. New York Jets in the first half +6.5. Indianapolis versus the Giants at MetLife under 40.5. Dallas +7.5. Green Bay, Minnesota over 48.5. Atlanta +3.5. It is NFL The Extra Points, the big show, week 17. It is the final of 2024. Sending you guys amazing vibes. Have a great day. Enjoy your life. Guns, a pleasure as always. Close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, shout out to the chat, as they say. T-Moz, Stephen Hairston, Chris Boucher, Peter Groznia, JV, exactly, and Jabaka, of course, Mikey Lee, Sox Nation, let's go Irish, baby, and every one of you beautiful bastards that joined us here. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Gunsmith channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Sharky Water Station channel here on YouTube if you're watching. We are simulcasting, and we do this for the low price of $0.00. You got to hit the thumbs up. You got to subscribe to the channel, and you got to hit the bell so you know when every time that content comes off our channels. And go check us out on X at Gunspicks, GUNZPICKS, and Sharks in Sports, 88 with an N. That is going to do it here. Appreciate and also check out the odds fella too on X. He couldn't be here because his connection was terrible, like Shark said. But we'll be back New Year's Eve to break down the Knowledge for College football playoff edition, where the games matter and we don't have to talk about these meaningless bowl games anymore. Playoff implications on the line. So join us there. New Year's Eve, which will be on Tuesday. So that's going to do it here for the Extra Point Show. Let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the bowl. And as always, let's keep dancing. Gig up again.